In the chaotic days of ancient Israel before there were kings, the land was like a group project gone wrong. Everyone did what they thought was right and no one wanted to take responsibility. This was the time of the judges, charismatic leaders raised by God to rescue Israel whenever they got themselves into trouble, which, spoiler alert, was often. Deborah lived in the hill country of Ephraim, between Ramah and Bethel, a place of rocky highlands and scattered villages. People would one day call her a mother in Israel, but long before that title, she was simply Deborah, the wife of Lapidoth. Unlike many women of her time, her story wasn't defined by household duties alone. Deborah had a quiet fire in her spirit and a heart tuned to God's voice. As she grew, her wisdom became impossible to ignore. Neighbors came to her with disputes, and her counsel always seemed to carry a weight beyond human reasoning. At some point, her calling became undeniable. God raised her as a prophetess. When she spoke, it was as though heaven itself leaned close. Soon, people began traveling from neighboring tribes just to sit beneath the shade of a lone palm tree where she held court. That tree became so legendary they named it the Palm of Deborah. There, in the open air, she listened to quarrels, delivered judgments, and spoke the words God gave her. This was radical for the ancient Near East. Women were rarely seen outside the home, let alone holding authority over men. Yet Deborah's leadership wasn't born from social structures but divine appointment. Her authority came from God Himself, and the people of Israel recognized it. The nation needed her. Israel was under the oppressive rule of King Jabin of Canaan, whose military commander, Sisera, terrorized the land with 900 iron chariots. In an age of wooden wheels and sandals, those chariots were the equivalent of an unstoppable armored tank division. Farmers, shepherds, and scattered tribes stood no chance against such power. For 20 years, fear hung over Israel like a dark cloud. One day, sitting beneath her palm tree, Deborah received a word from God that would change history. Go. Gather 10,000 men. I will deliver Sisera into your hands. She summoned Barak, a seasoned warrior from the tribe of Naphtali, and with calm authority told him, "It's time. Gather the troops. Meet Sisera at Mount Tabor and watch what God will do." Barak shifted on his feet, glanced at the ground and finally said, "I'm not going unless you come with me." Deborah's eyes softened, but a small knowing smile formed. "I'll go. But because of this, the honor won't be yours. A woman will take Sisera down." When the day came, the army of Israel marched to Mount Tabor. The mountain rose like a green island out of the surrounding plain, its slopes covered in low shrubs and rocky ledges. From its height, they could see the vast valley of Jezreel stretching below, a wide, fertile plain that was now a battlefield. Across the valley, a rumble began, low at first, then growing like distant thunder. The horizon darkened with the silhouettes of Sisera's army. The Canaanite forces moved in tight formations, their banners whipping in the wind. And at the center, the glint of iron wheels caught the sunlight. 900 chariots rolled forward in perfect lines, each one pulled by powerful horses, their wheels kicking up dust. The sound of iron and hooves pounded the ground until it felt like the earth itself trembled. Israel's 10,000 men were mostly farmers turned fighters. They clutched spears and swords with calloused hands, their sandals digging into the mountain soil. From the heights of Tabor they could see the impossible odds. Some swallowed hard. Others gripped their weapons tighter. A few glanced at Deborah, standing calm and unmoved, her eyes fixed not on the enemy but on the sky. And then it happened. The sky shifted. Dark clouds gathered out of nowhere, thick and heavy. A wind swept across the valley, carrying with it the smell of rain. The first drops fell, cool against parched skin. Within minutes it wasn't just rain, it was a deluge. Water poured from the heavens as if God himself had opened the sky. The Kishon River, which wound like a thin ribbon through the valley, swelled in an instant. Water spilled over its banks, rushing across the flat land. The rich earth turned to sucking mud under the pounding storm. Sisera's iron chariots, once their pride and power, became their trap. Wheels spun helplessly. Horses screamed and stumbled as the ground swallowed the heavy vehicles. The perfect formation collapsed into chaos. Barak's voice cut through the storm, "Charge!" Israel surged down the slopes of Mount Tabor, feet splashing through water and mud, shouting war cries that echoed off the hills. What had looked like a slaughter waiting to happen became a miracle unfolding before their eyes. The farmers became warriors. The hunted became victors. Sisera, drenched and desperate, abandoned his chariot, his iron advantage now a useless weight in the mud. He fled on foot through the storm, the rain washing the paint from his face and the arrogance from his heart. Hours later, he stumbled into a quiet clearing where the tents of the Kenites stood. His chest heaved as he approached one. A woman appeared at the entrance, Jael, wife of Heber the Kenite. Jael was no ordinary desert woman. Life on the edge of tribal lands had made her strong. She had the weathered hands of someone who pitched and struck tents daily, the sharp eyes of a person used to scanning horizons for threats, and a calmness born from survival in harsh lands. Her clothing was simple, woven wool dyed in earthy tones, but her presence was steady, like the desert rock underfoot. "Come in, my lord. Don't be afraid," she said with gentle assurance. Sisera practically collapsed into the tent. "Please water," he croaked. Jael nodded, but instead of water, she poured warm goat's milk into a simple clay cup and handed it to him. The milk coated his throat and brought a heavy drowsiness over his exhausted body. He lay down and she covered him with a blanket. "Stand at the entrance," he mumbled. "If anyone comes, say I'm not here." But Sisera didn't hear his own last words. Sleep claimed him instantly. Jael stood silently, watching his chest rise and fall. Then, with the precision of someone who had driven tent pegs her entire life, she picked up a long iron peg and a wooden mallet. Moving quietly, she placed the peg at his temple. One sharp, practiced strike. Another. The sound was dull against the storm still rumbling in the distance. Sisera didn't wake. When Barak finally arrived, dripping wet and exhausted from the chase, Jael stepped out of the tent. Her face was calm, her voice steady. "Looking for someone?" she asked, nodding inside. "He's in here." Nailed it. The land was silent except for the fading storm and the whispers of awe. The victory wasn't just Israel's. It was God's. When the sun broke through the next morning, the valley that had been a swamp of mud and iron shone under fresh light. Deborah lifted her voice in a song that would echo through generations, a song of courage, deliverance, and a God who fights for his people. Deborah's story is extraordinary because she wasn't a warrior by trade, nor a king by title. She was a woman who heard God and obeyed without fear. Her leadership began not with a sword but with a listening ear and a willing heart. She reminds us that true authority isn't about position but obedience, and that courage is contagious. One fearless person can ignite a nation.